Okay, Shulam Aleichem everybody, welcome to Hashkifa Studios. We are filming in the studio again. It's Erev Shabbos Kodesh, Parshas Tazir Matzayra. Tomorrow the Daf Yomi Welt, the whole world is starting Masechta Shevuos, so we're recording a day early. Coming into the studio from the time we came in here until now is a couple of hours. We had a few serious setbacks, and it felt like the Yitzhahara was saying, Gold, I'm not letting you start Masechta Shevuos. First of all, I was nervous because I never learned Masechta Shevuos, really. It's my first time. And number two, there were technical difficulties with the camera, with the computers, and it's Erev Shabbos, and come on, we're in a rush. But I decided it's Ma'aseh Satan and Kolas Cholas Kashas, especially as we embark on a new Masechta. So I appreciate you being with us, you being with me and learning together with me. And Mirza Hashem, Shenizke, Lahaschel, Ulasayim, Masechta Shevuos. So we start with Shevuos Shtayim Shehen Arba, opening 4 words of the Masechta, which means that there are 2 Shevuos that are mafurish in the Torah when it comes to a specific category of Shevuos. There are different types of Shevuos, as we'll see in the Masechta as we go on. But this particular Shevuah that we're dealing with in the Mishnah is called a Shevuos Bitoy. It's a voluntary Shevuah. A lot of times Bezdin or somebody else forces you to make a Shevuah, somebody who is being Teveya you. Here, you on your own decided you're going to make a Shevuah. I swear I'm not going to eat this meat, or I will eat it. That's called a Shevuos Bitoy. And if it's in future tense, in other words, I will or will not eat, those are the 2 Shevuos that are mefurish in the Torah and the pasuk of Nefesh Kisishava Levate B'Svesayim Leheira or Lehetiv. Leheira, Lehetiv are Lashinis of Lahaba, future tense, and that's mefurish in the Torah. You're not allowed to. If you do that, you could do that, but if you do that and you violate a B'Shaygig, there's a Karmel of the Yerid, B'Mezid, there's Malchus. Shevuos Shtayim Shen Arba. But that splits into 4 because we learn from a drasha that that even if it's said in past tense, achalti or lo yachalti, instead of oichel or lo yoichel, that you're also chayiv on that. It's not mafurish in the Torah. So shtayim that are mafurish in the Torah and arba, the other 2 are not mafurish. It's midrasha. The second halach in the Mishnah is yidiyas atum shtayim shen arba. There's a pattern. By Tumah, we bring in Tumah because it has a similar pattern to that. You find, when it comes to Tumas Mikdash v'Kedashav, a person who is Tameh, and he forgets that he was Tameh, and he walks into the Azara, or he eats Hektish, then B'Shoigig is Chayv v'Karbanoi, L'V'Yored B'Mezid, it's Malchus, those are Mefurish in the Torah. Shen Arba splits into another 2, which equals 4. The other 2 is, if let's say, the Gemara's going to talk about it, let's say he remembered that he was Tameh, but he forgot, or he didn't know that the meat that he ate was Hekdesh, or the place that he stepped into was Kodesh. That's also learned from a drasha, which is the other 2 that come out, the tolda, so to speak, of the original 2. Yitzis Shabbos Shtayim Shen Arba. By Shabbos we find a similar concept, that there are 2 variations of a malacha that is mafurish in the Torah, which is Eitzah. Shehein Arba, there's another 2 variations of the Tolda, which is Achnasa, which equals 4. Total is 4. Mars Negoim, Shnaim Shen Arba. Now these words should excite us, because we are in the Shabbos of Tazria Matzayra, Mamish, our Parsha. Mars Negoim, Shnaim Shen Arba. There are 2 Negoim that are mafurish in the Torah. We'll see. Se'es and Beheres, and then they have told us as well, that are learned from a drasha, and therefore the other 2, the told us of the Se'es and the Beheres, are the 2 that makes it equal 4. So those are the 4 different areas in Torah that share a common denominator of Shtayim Shehen Arba. 2 of them are mafurish, and the other 2 are learned from a drasha. Now, what's interesting is the Mishnah is going to go instead of discussing the very first line that we started with, which is our Masechta, Shevuos Shtayim Shen Arba, we're going to jump to Tumah, and the Gemara is going to ask the question of Gimel. We'll get over there why we skip the first line and jump to Tumah. Es sheyesh ba yediyah betchila v'yediyah b'soif v'helam beintayim. So forgetfulness comes in all shapes and forms. This kind of forgetfulness we're talking about in the Mishnah is a yediyah betchila v'yediyah b'soif v'helam beintayim. Means you remembered that you were tamei, then you forgot your tamei, and then you remembered again. So now, once you remember again, you have to bring a carbon oil of a kapara. You need to tshuva. Yesh ba yediyah betchila ve'ein ba yediyah b'soif. What if you knew from the onset that you are tamei, but you forgot about it? Then you ate hektish or you stepped into the azara, and you never found out. You never remembered that you were tamei and you did an aveira. So the Mishnah says, how do you get a kapara for that? Sur nasa b'fnim v'yemakepurim toila at shivodelo v'yovi ba'ola v'yared. So the way this works is, you don't get punished. You're protected from einish through the soyer hanasa b'fnim, which is the soyer la Hashem, right? The two seirim, soyer la Hashem, soyer la Zazla. Soyer la Hashem gets shechted, and from the blood, it gets sprinkled onto the Mizbeach Hazov, the Paroiches, and the Kodesh HaKadoshim. That protects you. The Yom Kippurim itself, Yom Kippur itself protects you. Until you find out, until you learn, and you know v'yovi ba'olavir that you were takatame and you didn't have and then you bring a proper carbon. Okay, now ein ba'yadiyah betchila avol yesh ba'yadiyah b'saif. What if you didn't know to begin with that you're tamei? You had no idea. You were unaware. And you started eating hektish, and then after you ate it, you were talking to a friend, and you told your friend, I had this piece of meat, it was delicious hektish. He says, what, you had hektish? You were tummy, don't you remember yesterday you became tummy? So you found it afterwards. So what do you do there? Soyer nasa b'chutz v'yom kippurim mechaper. So here, the soyer hanasa b'chutz, which is the soyer of Yom Kippur, the Musaf Yom Kippurim, right? There are basically three seirim on Yom Kippur. Two of them are Sar Lazazl and Sar La Hashem, which gets sprinkled from that carbon. The blood gets sprinkled in the Mizbech Hazov, and the Pareches, and the Aron. And the other Sar, the third Sar, is the Musaf. The regular carbon Musaf bring Yom Kippur, and that's Mechaper on a Yediyah Basaif, only if you found out later, but you didn't know in the beginning that you became Tameh. Shenemar Movad Chatas HaKippurim. We learn it from the words Movad Chatas HaKippurim. The words Movad Chatas HaKippurim is referring to the Chatas HaPnimi. Al Mashazem Mechaper Zem Mechaper. Ma Pnimi. Ein Mechaper Ela Davash Yesh B'Yediyah. Just like the soyer that goes onto the Mizbeach Hazov and the Pareches and the Aron inside the Kodesh HaKadoshim, needs some level of Yediyah. What's the Yediyah that we need over there? The Yediyah Betchila. Because that soyer is Mechaper if you knew in the beginning, from the outset, but you didn't find out later. So you need some level of Yediyah. Except, by the Pnimi it's Yediyah Betchila, and the Chitzayni is Yediyah Besoif. But but if there's no yediyah at all, you're completely unaware that you became tamei, that you're eating hektish, bituma, you never found out about it. What do you do? How do you get a kapar for that? Says the Mishnah, Seirei haragolim v'seirei shechadashim mechaper divrei Rabbi Yehuda. For that you have the carbon musaf on Yantiv and the carbon musaf on Rosh Chodesh, and that's mechaper on someone who's completely unaware that he ate hektish while he was tamei. So just to review, it sounds a little bit more complicated than it really is. Just to review, there are really 4 levels. Let's call it 4 levels. One level is Yediyah Betchila, Yediyah Besaif, Vehelam Bentayim. That needs a carbon oil of a yared. You knew you were tamei, you forgot, you ate hektish, and then you remembered. That needs a carbon oil of a yared. Then you have Yediyah Betchila. You remembered in the beginning, but you forgot, and you never remembered again. Or, right, you didn't know in the beginning at all, you ate hekdesh, and then you found out later. And the fourth one is you never found out. You were completely unaware throughout the whole ordeal. Those are the 4 levels, and for each one there is a unique kapara. And Rabbi Yehuda says what he just said, that for the case where there was no yediyah at all, not betchilu, not besoif, you have the karban musaf of Yom Tov, the karban musaf of Rosh Chodesh is mechaper. Rabbi Shimon says. He says differently. Se'ira regolim mechaprin, avaloi se'ira rasha chadashim. He says no. Regolim is mechaper on an aveira that you had no idea, you're completely unaware, betchila and basayf. You never knew, you never found out. But not Rosh Chodesh. Ve'al ma se'ira rasha chadashim mechaper. So what's the Sar Rosh Chodesh mechaper on? The Sar Rosh Chodesh is mechaper on al hatohir she'ochel asatameh. That is mechaper on a guy who was tahor, he wasn't even tameh, and he ate basar hekdesh that was tameh, that the Sar of Rosh Chodesh is mechaper. Reb Meir Omer, kol ha'se'ir and kaparas and shava al tumas mikdash v'kedashav. All seirim, all karbanis, all the musafim are shavim, are equal, that they are all mechaper on tumas mikdash v'kedashav, whether you had a yediyah in the beginning, or you had a yediyah in the end, or you never knew. That's all the same. What's interesting is that even Reb Meir agrees that the Sar Hanasa Befnim, Rashi explains, that he agrees that it's only Toila. Right? In other words, in the case of Yediyah Batchila, and you never found out afterwards, that's only Toila. That can only protect you until you find out that you were Tameh, and then you bring a proper carbon oil of a Yared. Which is really interesting. Because that requires a carbon oil of a Yared, and it only protects you. It's not Mechaper. That everybody seems to agree to. Okay, now we repeat Reb Shimon's Shita, because the Mishnah is going to bring a kasha from the Chachamim. Reb Shimon used to say, Reb Shimon said, the soil of Rosh Chodesh, the musaf of Rosh Chodesh is mechaper on a Torah that ate basar hekdesh tameh. V'shel regolim mechaprin al she'ein ba yediyah loy betchila v'loy besoif. And musaf of Shalosh regolim is mechaper on someone who's completely unconscious, unaware, never knew and never found out that he was tameh. V'shel yoyim ha'kippura mechaper al she'ein ba yediyah betchila avol yesh ba yediyah besoif. The musaf, the soyer hachitzayin of Yom Kippur is mechaper if you never knew the beginning, or while you ate the hegdish, but you found out later. Amru loy, so the Chachamim said, Mahu sheyikervu zeh bazeh. They asked Reb Shimon the following question: what happens, suppose you lost one of the karbanos? Let's say you lost the musaf of Yom Kippur, right? Musaf Yom Kippur is mechaper for a very specific avera. It's mechaper only, the Sorah Chitzin. If you didn't know in the beginning, you only found out at the end. So you lost it. So you makrav your mafresh, another carbon, you bring a different Sorah. Then it comes Rosh Chodesh, the next Rosh Chodesh, right? And you found the Sorah that was supposed to be for Yom Kippur, that was designated for the Sorah on Yom Kippur to be nikrav and sprinkled outside the Mizbech HaChitzayin, which was supposed to be mechaper for Yediyah B'Soif. And now you want to use it for Rosh Chodesh. Problem is, Rosh Chodesh is mechaper for a completely different avera. The Sorah of Rosh Chodesh is mechaper for Tahar She'achal Zatameh. So the Chachamim asked Reb Shimon, Ma'u sheyikarbu zeh b'zeh. Can you use one Sorah that was designated for, let's say, Yom Kippur, which is mechaper for a very, very specific Tuma, for a very specific case, which is Yediyah B'Soif. Now you want to use it for Rosh Chodesh. Rosh Chodesh mechaper for a different avera of Tar Shachal Zatoma. Could you use it? So Shimon said, Amalan Yikarvu, yes, you could use it. Amrulai. So the Chachamim asked him, Hoyul ve'en kaparas and shaveh. If they don't have the same kapara, each one is mechaper for a different kind of aveira, heich kreven zeh b'zeh. How could you use one shiur that was designated for one kapara to be mechaper for a different aveira? So the Gemara says, Amar lahem, Shimon answered, Kulan boin lechaper al tumas migdash v'kedashav. They all fall under the umbrella of tumas migdash v'kedashav. Yeah, tumas migdash v'kedashav has a lot of subcategories, but once they are under the umbrella of tumas migdash v'kedashav, you could use one carbon shiur, which is designated for a specific category within the world of tumas migdash v'kedashav, and use it for another category. That's not a problem. Shimon ben Yehuda Aimer Mishmai, he says, also he repeats Reb Shimon's shita, but he adds a knetch to Reb Shimon, and based on that knetch, he changes a little bit the conversation between Reb Shimon and the Chachamim. Reb Shimon ben Yehuda Mishmai Seirei Rosh Chadashim Mechaper al Torah, right? Mishmai is b'shem Reb Shimon. Who's the Reb Shimon? Reb Shimon Bar Yochai, soon like Boimer. It's exciting to talk about Reb Shimon's opinion, a whole Mishnah about Reb Shimon, like Boimer, Geschmack. In the name of Reb Shimon Bar Yochai, Seirei Rosh Chadashim Mechaprin al HaTorah she'ochel esatame. The shiur of Rosh Chodesh is mechaper on Torah she'ochel esatame, like we said earlier. Moisef alein shel regalim, right? So he puts it into categories one on top of the other. In addition to that, kapara shel regalim shemechaper on Torah she'ochel esatame ve'al she'em b'yidei b'tchila b'sayif. They're also mechaper on the case of ein b'yidei lo b'tchila lo b'sayif, on that aver as well. Moisef alein she'yom kippurim. Wow, Yom Kippur, that takes the cake. I don't think it's a good analogy for Yom Kippur, but Moisef alein she'yom kippurim shehem mechaper al Torah she'ochel esatame v'al she'ein b'yidei lo b'tchila v'lo b'sayif v'al she'ein b'yidei b'tchila avol yesh b'yidei b'sayif. Here, it's mechaper even on the worst of the three aveiros, which there was some yediyah there, right? The lowest is Torah she'ochel esatame. That suffices with Rosh Chodesh, right? You're a Torah, right? You're a mamash Torah. The second level is regalim. I was Tomei, but I had no idea I was Tomei. Not b'tchila, not b'sayif. The third level is there was a yediyah. You're Tomei and you knew about it, b'sayif, right? So here, Yom Kippurim is mechaper. And that Musaf Shal Yom Kippurim is not just mechaper for that, but it's also mechaper every level underneath that, which is, if you never had a yediyah, you're Torah she'ochel esatame. So that is Reb Shimon's opinion, the way Reb Shimon ben Yehuda heard it from him. Says the Gemara, Amruloi, so the Chachamim said to him, Ma'u sheyikravu zeh b'zeh. Can you switch around the seirim and have a shiur that was designated for Rosh Chodesh, which is mechaper v'Torah she'ochel esatame, only for Torah she'ochel esatame? Can you use that for Yom Kippurim, which will now have to be mechaper for a guy who's Tomei, he never knew about it, never found out about it, or a guy who's Tomei, he knew about it and then he found out about it. So that is the shaila. Can you switch it around? Can one shiur that was designated for Rosh Chodesh, let's say, be used for Yom Kippur? So the Gemara says, Amar lehem hein. Yes. Amar lo, so they answered, Im kain. Yiyu shel Yom Kippurim kraven b'Rosh Chodashim. I understand if you want to use the shiur of Yom Kippur, which is the highest level of atonement, because it can even be mechaper on a person who was Tomei and had a yediyah l'basayif. You want to use that carbon that was designated for that aveira, but that includes also all the other aveiros. I understand how it could work for Rosh Chodesh, because it's all inclusive. Aval heichshel Rosh Chodashim kraven b'Yom Kippurim l'chaper kapara she'eina shalah. But to use the lowest level carbon of Rosh Chodesh, which only works for Torah she'ochel esatame, you want to use that carbon to go be mechaper for Yom Kippur, which is mechaper for yediyah basayif. He was Tomei and he only found out about it later. How could you do that? Aval heichshel Rosh Chodashim kraven b'Yom Kippurim l'chaper kapara she'eina shalah. Amalem kulon boin l'chaper tumas mikdash dashav. And on that he said, no, it's all under the umbrella of tumas mikdash v'kedashav, and memela, no problem at all. You can use the carbon of Rosh Chodesh even for Yom Kippur. It'll work. Says the Mishnah, what about a guy who went and b'mezid to the Beis HaMikdash, or he ate kachim b'mezid? So how does he have a kapara for that? So here the Mishnah says, Sor hanasa b'fnim v'yoyim ha'kipurim mechapren. Here you have a kapara from the sor that is nasa b'fnim, the sor la Hashem, that the kohen shechts, the kohen gadol shechts, and brings the blood into the kodesh hakadoshim, sprinkles it on the body between the body of Oren and the paroiches and the mizbech hazov. That will be mechaper for zodoin tumas mikdash v'kadoshim. Incredible, and in conjunction with Yom Kippurim atzmai, with Yom Kippurim itself, which is a pliya, because it seems like the soyer hanasa b'fnim can be mechaper on a mezid, but when it comes to a shaygig, right, the shaygig of yediyah betchila, let's say you knew you were tummy, then you forgot, and you never found out. The Mishnah said earlier in Amar Aleph that it's only tayla, it's not mechaper completely. You'll still need to bring a carbon oil of a yared. How could the sor hanasa b'fnim be completely mechaper for a mezid, and yet it wouldn't suffice for a complete kapara for a shaygig? It's only toila until achi yivada the yavi carbon oil of a yared. That's mamish a pliya tzuma to me. You have to say l'chayra that that wherever there's a possibility for you to have a complete kapara, like a carbon oil of a yared, then we're going to leave that option open for you. It seems like a higher level kapara. Whereas b'mezid, the carbon oil of a yared doesn't work for you. So you're left with the Sor Nasa B'fnim v'Yom Kippurim to atone for your Aveira. Okay? What about Al Shar Aveiras Shabbatayra? What about in all other Aveiras? Hakalois, V'achamurois, Hasdoines, V'ashgogois, Hoida v'loi hoida, asay v'loi sasay, krisis and Mrs. Bezdin, all of those, sor mishtaleach mechaper, echad Yisraelim, echad kana, echad meshuach. For that, the sor lazozel is mechaper. On all the other averas, whether you're Yisrael or a kohen meshuach, meshuach muchoma, the kohen gadol, if you're anointed, doesn't matter. You are all in the same boat. The sor mishtaleach is mechaper.
It doesn't mention a Levi.
It doesn't mention a Levi. Rocky, who is so kindly filming all the shiurim, is doing such a great job, is tining what happened to a Levi.
They bunching it in with Yisrael.
I'm assuming that they're included in Kahanim, but in Yisraelim or Kahanim? It's a great question.
It's a weird omission.
Yeah. Okay. Email us if you have some thoughts about that. Elo. Sha'apar mechaper. Oh no, I'm sorry. Oma bein Yisraelim l'kahanim l'kohen meshuach. What's the difference between Yisraelim, kahanim, and kohen meshuach? Which is interesting. The Mishnah just said, what do you mean they're all in the same boat when it comes to the sor hamishtalech, the sor lazozlo with shar averis? So I was going to say that here the Mishnah is asking with regard to tumas mikdash v'kedasha. We're going back to that unique category that earlier was said you need the so'ir la Hashem, right? For Zod and Tumas Mikdash Kedashav to be mechaper on Klal Yisrael, if they entered the Azora b'mezid while they're tameh, right? So here the Mishnah wants to know, maybe Kahanim, it wouldn't suffice for Kahanim the kapara of the so'ir la Hashem, right? Kahanim have a higher responsibility because they're working in the Beis HaMikdash. So is the Sur La Hashem enough to be mechaper for them? Says the Mishnah, no. No, you need the par of the Kohen Gadol, that the Kohen Gadol is makriv on Yom Kippur. That's the par. Also, it gets sprinkled inside the Kodesh HaKadoshim, the Mizbech HaZav, the Paroiches. That is mechaper on Kahanim. Reb Shimon says, you're right. Kishem shedam asor. Had nasa b'fnim mechaper. So just like the difference by Tumas Mikdash v'Kedashav, that for Klal Yisrael the dam asor had nasa b'fnim is mechaper on Klal Yisrael, kach dam apar mechaper lekahanim, and over there we say that whatever the sor accomplishes for Yisrael, the par accomplishes for Kahanim. They need the par. He says also for Shar Averis would also be true. There would be a difference between Klal Yisrael and Kahanim. So kashem sheviduya shel sar mishlam chapel Yisrael kach viduya shel par mechapel kahanim. So they wouldn't be lumped into the same sar lazazel with everybody else. For kahanim to have a kapara, you need the vidoy of the par to be mechaper for them. The sar lazazel is not mechaper for shar averos of kahanim. So kahanim are a different category. Bein le'inyan tumas migdash v'kedashav, and bein le'inyan shar averos tumas migdash v'kedashav. The dama par is mechaper for kahanim, and with regard to shar averos, dividoy on the par is mechaper for kahanim. That is the shita of Reb Shimon bar Yochai. So mamash Reb Shimon seems to own this Mishnah. Reb Shimon, whatever the Tanakama says, Reb Shimon has a unique opinion, and that's what he holds over here. Okay? Alech Shabbos if you're watching it before Shabbos, or I get Tavach.